Andy Austin here. I'm now relocated to the attic, which is going to be my new space. It's going to be the Andy in the Attic series coming very soon. Just to remind people, the memberships on my YouTube channel is now open, so you can join and sign up for unique content, live streaming and all the other good stuff, which is actually going to start on this Friday. So lots of stuff happening soon. Alright, now, next chapter from The Rainbow Machine, Tales from a Neurolinguist's Journal by Andrew T. Austin. That's me. You can buy this on Amazon and leave a review. That would be magnificent. This is the Problem Parts chapter. Now, parts therapy and the concept of parts was a new concept to me, introduced through me learning NLP. And when I came across the 6-step reframe. Now, this was long before I ever did a formal training. And I was running the hypnosis group at Southampton General Hospital, and we were meeting pretty much every other week for a number of years, actually. And early on, after I started, I knew about Ericksonian hypnosis and Ericksonian hypnotherapy, and this was my platform for experimenting and basically developing my skills as a hypnotist and as a therapist by teaching other people. And we had lots of regulars that would come. Well, I say lots, about 15 regulars. And then each time we ran a meeting, there would be all sorts of other people come along for a meeting or two, just to see what we were up to. And being based in the hospital, I hired a room in the teaching wing of the hospital in the evenings. And they let us have that room. And so all sorts of people would wander in with different medical, psychiatric, psychology backgrounds and add some interesting knowledge, experience, and techniques and methodologies to what we were practicing and playing with. Early on in the group, a couple of medical students came, and one of them said to me, "Have you read this?" and handed me a copy of Frogs into Princes by Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Now, I was a little familiar with NLP because it was something that was being mentioned to me on the year-long training course that I had done in Ericksonian hypnotherapy, but it wasn't something at that point I had really looked into or investigated. I read that book and was just amazed. And I know it was one of the earliest books of the NLP series by Bandler and Grinder. I still think it is one of the best books. It's out of publication and it sells for like thousands of dollars on eBay. If you haven't read it, do get a hold of a copy. I think you will be delighted with the information that's in there and the way it's presented. It's a fantastic book. In fact, all of the Bandler and Grinder books are well worth looking at. Now, from there, I was introduced to the 6-step reframe. And this is essentially a parts therapy. And that then led me into looking at the other influences upon NLP, which was Fritz Perls and Virginia Satir, amongst others, Milton Erickson being one of the main ones. Satir and Perls both also had their version of parts. So Perls would have people talking to their parts in empty furniture. So having conversations with, say they have an issue with their mother, issue with their father, have father in the chair and talk to the chair and have those conversations and play it out. And a lot of Gestalt therapy, which was developed by Perls, involved parts work. Virginia Satir would have her concept of a parts party, where let's just bring all the parts out and have conversations and interactions between them and find out what their internal relationships are. And I thought that was kind of interesting. What I then started to look at a little bit more was, what was the validity of the parts work? Because what I started to come across was the introduction of parts into a person's system where the parts weren't there. If I have a part of myself I fight with, so I'm always fighting with myself. Okay, we've got the part that's being fought with and the part that's doing the fighting. All well and good. But I started to see practitioners and therapists who were influenced by the NLP stream to create parts in their clientele. And this bothered me immensely. So it was an assumption that everyone has parts inside them, and that because I know a parts technique and it's a good technique, let's make everyone have parts. And that didn't seem particularly wholesome to me. Mostly because one of the things I had become very aware of was the satanic panic of the 90s, where recovered memory therapy and the concept of massive repression was very prevalent and was gaining a lot of ground in the field of psychology and was devastating to many people. And they were having this notion also of parts and the introduction of these things and I'm trying to find the word was installation. That's the word. The installation of parts into a person, which wasn't there previously. And that led into all sorts of extremes within the recovered therapy memory movement. So when I was seeing coaches and therapists identifying parts in the person and then saying, and give that part a name, and now we can have a conversation with it. And I thought, oh my God, it's like demonology. This is like the satanic panic nonsense that's going on. Which then led me to having a little look at a lot of the things within magic and occultism, and that's what I refer to in this particular chapter. Because the magicians of old, standing there in their magic circle before their triangle of art, evoking a demon to full visible manifestation, they're of course working with their imaginations, but we have a personification of an aspect of the self. If it's a demon that's being evoked, it's a personification of a negative aspect of self. And of course, the master of the temple, the magician, is attempting to have full control and a positive relationship with all of his demons. So the demons are under his will, doing his bidding. This just seemed like parts therapy to me. That I see a direct relationship between these two things. So the master of the temple being the inside, that the psyche, is able to master his different components that are racing around, running around inside his head, as opposed to being tormented by them. Now, for an illustration of what being tormented by a demon would look like, if we translate that back into parts therapy, imagine that I have a negativistic relationship with a member of my family, one of my parents, and they drive me insane. And even when they're not there, I'm arguing with them, and I'm trying, and they keep giving me a hard time. And I remember the things they say, and I'm rowing. I'm having an argument with them inside my head. There's a part. Now, in the magical paradigm, that would be a demon. And rather than arguing with the demon, we need to operate a degree of negotiation and then conquer the demon. So the demon does our bidding rather than us trying to argue with it and fight with it the whole time. One of the key things within that thing of demonology is the magician makes peace with his demons. And the Christians would take that and say, well, we need to do an exorcism and condemn that demon to hell. I'm not entirely sure how constructive that is. If assuming demons don't actually exist, which I'm very doubtful of, we end up with somebody, and you know those hate preachers? All religions have them. All religions seem to have a version of the hate preacher. And one of the characteristics of these hate preachers is they do like to both condemn, but also condemn the demons to hell. And they love to do their exorcisms because it's great and spectacular. Now, I think a lot of these things are both installed by the operator, whether it's by the hate preacher, or whether it's by the therapist, or whether it's by the recovered memory therapist. They're installing a lot of the problems they then profess to be able to cure. But we also have the notion of the personification of our introjects. Oh yes, it's the personification of our introjects. So I carry inside my psyche, my inner world, concepts that are of the world. So I might have people in there, friends, enemies, relatives, and I may well have irregular interactions and conversations between them. I may even know what goes on between them. Now, what I'm relating to isn't the actual person in the physical world. I'm relating to my concept, my internalized concept of that person, which is an introject. And those introjects seem to have a life of their own. They might be objects, so we can objectify a concept. I can personify it. We can turn concepts into people. We can have concepts of people. And we can anthropomorphize, so I might have monsters and creatures and all sorts of other stuff. So we have all these ways that we construct these parts that we then relate to. Now, a lot of the parts therapy stuff, like a 6-step reframe, maintains the intention of the part, but finds an alternative way of behaving. And I like that. That's a really neat way of creating a congruence and an alignment. Then we have the ultimate parts therapy. And when I said to Connie Ray, you do know this is just a glorified and supreme version of demonology. I don't know if that went down so well. Connie Ray Andreas's core transformation process. Now, what this is doing is identifying parts intentions, and then chunking it up to higher levels. And if you haven't studied or practiced core transformation, if you haven't done the training or bought the book, do it. It is one of the most useful techniques and processes you will ever learn. It's one of those ones that a number of years ago, quite a lot, 20 years ago, I spent, I think, probably about a couple of months, maybe longer, doing a core transformation on myself every single day. And throughout that particular year, it was a regular feature where I was exploring the application of core transformation to individual parts, to introjects, to various concepts that I had on myself, various things that I have objectified, personified, or anthropomorphized, and that I could identify. Let's do a full core transformation on that. Magicians out there, so those from the secret society, secret rulers of the world who are watching this, if you are very familiar with the Goetia and Goetic magic Solomonic tradition, core transformation is definitely something you're going to want to have a look at. Because what has happened here with Connie Ray's development is Connie Ray and Samara Andreas core transformation. Have a look at some of the concepts in terms of chunking up to transform what could be a negativistic component into something that is its highest possible manifestation. It will add a new dimension to your ceremonial work if you're doing Solomonic tradition. And I think it is an essential piece in any magician's toolkit. So, other things where people can have parts and then they turn them into personifications and other things. Imagine I'm depressed. I feel miserable. I am depressed. Now, at some point, if that depression, that feeling persists, I may be exposed to a diagnosing clinician. And the diagnosing clinician may say, well, you have depression. So I've gone from being I am depressed to I have depression. Now, if that depression persists, I'm now a depressive. I might have a diagnosis. I am a depressive. So I've gone from I feel depressed, I have depression, I'm a depressive. We've moved from a feeling to identity. Now, here's where it starts to get really weird with this identity stuff. You see, I can be someone who is no longer depressed. And that's me. That is, I'm no longer depressed. I used to be depressed. However, if I apply for life insurance or anything else, I'm officially a depressive because I got a diagnosis because I tried to get help 30 years ago. 30 years ago. And because I got help, that officially categorized me at an identity level of being a depressive, even though I'm not depressed. Now, here's where it starts to get interesting as well. You see, we have the AA movement, this 12-step programs. Now, I've got nothing against these 12-step programs, but it's an observation I have with this, which is I can be an alcoholic, but I haven't had a drink for 50 years. My name's Andy, I'm an alcoholic. My last drink was 50 years ago. That makes no sense. So now I can have the identity of the problem, but not have the problem itself. And that seems to be a little bit misaligned to me, because we can change behavior, but surely we need to also update and upgrade the identity. Core transformation, that'll do that for you. Now, I've gone from I feel depressed, I have depression, I am a depressive. Now, the depression can take a life of its own if it persists. And the depression ruins my life. Now, the depression is an active force acting upon me. But of course, the depression is just a personification, objectification, anthropomorphication of how I feel. But the depression ruins my life. Cause and effect relationship is now created. And now the depression can take on a life of its own. The depression follows me around everywhere I go. The depression is like a black dog. Bingo! We have it anthropomorphized. It's the black dog of depression. We might objectify it. It's like a black cloud. Now there's a degree of separation. I'm not the one doing it. It's the black cloud. It's the black dog. The black thing seems to feature a little bit here. So now we have taken what was a feeling, moved it through an object to identity. Now we've personified, objectified, or anthropomorphized it. And now it has a life of its own. And now I go to a therapist because I want the therapist to treat the depression. There's nothing wrong with me, mate. It's the depression that's the issue. Can't you fix the depression? Don't involve me. And this is the thing that I started to see way back when I was doing the development of the hypnotherapy, the hypnosis group, and then into NLP, and then working with clients, was I started to see people that didn't want to be involved in the therapeutic process. Treat the depression, get rid of the depression. Don't make me change, because there's nothing wrong with me. It's the depression, it's the schizophrenia, it's the anxiety, it's the panic attacks. And they had objectified and personified those concepts, so they're no longer the one doing it. Now we try and reconnect the person to their responsibilities. We try and reconnect the person to their experience. But guess what? The last thing they want to do is be connected to the depression and connected to their anxiety. And that, for me, is where now parts work can really come in to be quite useful. Now, as always, do please use the comment section below if you have a contrary view to anything I've said here, any additional information or bits and pieces. Do please post them in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.